Dawson Rider Review.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here. This is going to be my review for, I almost said Power Rangers Beast Morphers issue 45. For MMPR issue 45 from the Necessary Evil arc. I was originally going to wait and do a little bit more of a catch-up review again, but I'll probably do that again later. But I felt this was a significant turning point issue that I really wanted to talk about on its own before we do the next cluster review. And I just frankly really wanted to talk about it with my friend in the camera. It was a very good issue and a very interesting issue. Some things may be predictable, some things not. But there was two major points to talk about in this that I wanted to address. And one was Repercussions from last week, or I guess they finished the story last week. They finished what they started. But the Omega Rangers done stormed Zed's castle and just took him. Like, they defeated him, they stepped on him with a Zord. This was like my dream storyline. Because I've always been annoyed by the, don't escalate the battle unless they force you to. Why? Do you not want to win? Like, I mean, obviously, the nature of PR and Sentai and the way it is, it's just not happening, or it's never happened before. But I've always wanted to explore that. I'm like, why not? Like, why not just blow up? You know where they are. Like, you know, and people are like, well, Rangers don't kill. They kill every week! That's why I liked the Alpha, or I thought the Alpha 1 story was interesting, where they're like, oh, you're a monster for wanting to do this. I'm like, really? You guys blow up monsters every week. He's just talking about ending the fight early. Like, Zordon's kind of a half measure. And I don't think all of these ways are perfectly the right way, but I think there's a halfway point to be talked about. And I thought this was really cool to see the Rangers storm it, like step on him with a Zord, because lots of people have joked out about that. Like, oh, instead of waiting for it to grow, why don't you just start from the Megazord and step on him? And they just took him. And I thought that was really cool because I've always wanted to see the Rangers be a little bit less of a half measure with that. And it was really cool to see, and it was interesting too just to show how much more skilled the Omega Rangers are, and it leads to some really cool stuff because, you know, the Boom timeline is its own timeline slash universe from the original series, but, you know, they do follow roughly the same bullet points, so like all the bullet points we know happen. There's just more stuff that happened, more detailed stuff. But this is going to create a huge divergence in what the normal timeline is. Like, the Omega Rangers existing instead of the Peace Conference already is a divergence, but that could have still even existed in the original 90s timeline and we wouldn't have known it, and it doesn't necessarily disrupt things depending on how they did it. Like, same thing with Shattered Grid. If without the consequences here, since they erased everyone's memories, that works too. Same thing even with Draken. Like, Draken was a major storyline, but it fit between the pages of MMPR, so that it still could have happened and not necessarily affected anything had Shattered Grid not happened. But you know what I mean. Like, Shattered Grid and the Draken story were two major storylines, but the way that they resolved them, obviously without Necessary Evil, it didn't really necessarily create a long-term problem for what we know happens. But this is huge. I mean, Zed could get out and immediately take over and we could still follow the ref events of seasons 2 through 3. But it's a huge deal, and I think that's definitely going to cause even more divergence in the timeline, which makes me happy because when they said everything was going to change after Necessary Evil, or after Shattered Grid, I honestly thought it was going to be something different. Like, we were going to see altered events, like all of a sudden, you know, you go to Lightspeed Rescue and Dana's the Red Ranger or something. Like, I thought it was going to be stuff like that, or Mike ended up taking over for Leo, and Leo became the Magna Defender. I mean, this is not PR related, but I was thinking of stuff like that. Like, it was going to cause ripples through the timeline, and like MMPR stuff would change, like maybe Jason didn't leave, or maybe he became Zeo Ranger 3 Blue. And so that's kind of more along the lines of what's happening here. Is this, the Omega Rangers was a huge divergence, but it was kind of off to the side. But now it's causing something that could be potentially huge for the future of the main MMPR storylines. And then there was an interesting scene with Jason and Zordon where he's like, well, thanks for doing that, but I was really trying to train my Rangers up. And this was an interesting conversation because Zordon almost framed it like he was using Zed as training for the new team. And he also talked about how, well, yeah, Zed's out and that's great, but that means just someone's going to be sent to replace him, and they could be even more than this team can handle. And it's like, I sort of got his point from that stance. Like, I guess that makes sense. Like, if they send like Master Vile or the Machine Empire or Divatox or Astronema or Dark Spectre himself, like whoever, somebody we don't know about, maybe that would be even more than the new team could handle, and that could ultimately lead to bigger repercussions. But you don't know that for sure, but that was like the only point I understood. On the other hand, I'm like, that's kind of weird that you would want to use the threat against the planet as basically a training ground for your team, because yeah, they could have eventually handled it and this would have been a good learning experience, but what about all the bad that happens in between as Zed exists? So I thought that was a really interesting conversation, a really interesting development. Right now it appears that Goldar, Squat Babu, and Finster are going to try to go out on their own and do some stuff, but then obviously Zordon mentioned someone else could take over, so that could be a thing as well. I think both will be interesting to explore. Like, I'm kind of curious to see what kind of stuff Goldar's team gets up to, but I'm curious who would replace them, what Zed's role is. I'm kind of disappointed in a way about Zed being taken off the board for now, because I did want to see his character being given more development, just like Rita and stuff was. But I don't know. I think that's really exciting. Lots of potential there. That was really cool just on its own and for lots of reasons. And then, you know, you get to the end and there's the betrayal where the blue Omega Ranger betrays the team. This was kind of telegraphed in a description a while back. We kind of knew it was going to happen, but I wasn't sure how. And basically this comes about because when the Omega Rangers meet the MMPR team again, she has like one of those moments, I'm sure you've seen those moments where you have a character that either is a doppelganger or looks like somebody that's evil, and you have a moment where somebody will see them and they'll see that evil character and then their vision will clear and they'll see it's not them. And you got one of those moments where she saw Draken, like, amongst the MMPR team, and then it's like, huh? And it's White Ranger Tommy, and the suits look so similar. That was a cool moment. That would be really cool to see, like, in live action or an animated show. Like, that was a cool moment. But that inspires her to be very mad at Tommy and tries to take him out briefly, mistaking him, because it's weird because what happened to her is a consequence of what Draken did, but she was never there. Like, I know she wound up seeing it through Jason's vision, but it almost would have made sense for someone to have a bigger reaction that was actually there. But for the storyline, it makes sense. But I think you know what I mean. But regardless, this sort of inspires her line of thinking, like, we can't let this happen again. No Tommy Olivers must be left alive, and she wants to take him out. And the blue emissary is like, no, trust me, this is an anomaly. I've seen through time. You know, Tommy's Jesus. He's just the best Ranger ever. Everyone loves him. Fitness year 2019. You know, all that. Yeah, green. Like, so he was like giving him the speed. He showed him a JDS Instagram. He's like, I know he ate that cookie on the toilet one time, but it's like, it's an anomaly. Trust me. Draken and the cookie toilet thing, an anomaly. And she just isn't having it. Like, that's interesting. It's really interesting because we know, obviously, Tommy started with Green with Evil, but then he became this very key heroic figure in Power Rangers, whether you like him or not. And then, obviously, the Draken story was huge, but from her perspective, all she really sees is Draken. She doesn't know what we know, seen what we've seen, and that's an interesting perspective. She's like, we can't even risk it. Like, I agree, let's take Sogo out. Like, even if he isn't the Overlord anymore, let's just take it, just to be safe. But I think that's an interesting perspective, and she's basically having none of this. And we find out that the emissary was involved with giving him white light powers, and she's shocked by that. And then she takes him out, and he starts, after he's being taken out, the decoloration starts of, like, his ranger shifting, which I thought was really interesting. I didn't even know, like, that she could kill him. Did she kill him? Will he survive? I don't know. I was shocked by that. Like, when I knew she was going to betray them, I didn't think she was going to kill the emissary. I thought it was just going to be like a divergence in opinion or something. Like, I'm not sure what I thought was going to happen, but I didn't know she was going to take him out and then release the morphing grid, like, mutants. And then she basically says, okay, the Rangers were the mistake. The grid chose us based off of what happened after Shattering Grid. We're going to be the heroes to stop the Rangers. But that's an interesting direction. Kind of a big swing where you're like, got to take out Draken. You know what? To hell with all Rangers. But I think that's an interesting idea that this group, or specifically her, feels like the grid chose us. After Shadow Grid and everything was reformed, the grid gave us these powers, and we're going to be the ones to save it from the Rangers. It's time for the Rangers to end. But I think that's going to be a really interesting idea to explore. The only problem I have with it is I wish we would have had a little more time. Like, maybe a couple more issues showing a little bit more of the dynamics of the Omega Ranger team, maybe even more of a bond to make the betrayal sting a little bit more. To develop things just a little bit more, maybe get a few more of those Ranger mutants. But I think the idea of these empowered feeling like it's them versus the Rangers and they're the new saviors, even though the other guys seem like they're evil, but I think that's a really interesting concept. So, a lot of really interesting stuff in this issue. It's the end especially, but also the stuff with Zed, and lots of possibilities opened up. I thought this was a very strong issue. I'll give it a 9. Not perfect. Like I said, I do wish things were a little bit more developed, like given a little bit more room to breathe to make this more impactful and feel more right. but I think it's a really cool direction, and yet again, I'm very excited for the future because there's so many directions going on with the Omega Rangers and the MMPR team and beyond that I'm looking forward to. But what do you guys think? Are you excited by these developments? Did you think they felt right? Did you think they felt wrong? Somewhere in between? And let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for all my videos. Till next time, Dawson Ryder, signing out.